I am Lynn, 34 years old, and a self-made real estate investor who clawed my way up from nothing at 18. Growing up, my brother Kevin and I were inseparable despite our 4-year age gap. When our grandfather passed, he left me his lakeside house, a place filled with precious memories. I never imagined this inheritance would lead to being publicly slapped by Kevin's fiancée Ashley at their wedding reception with 200 people watching in shocked silence. What could possibly justify such a humiliating scene? Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you are watching from, and hit that like button if you have ever dealt with family drama over property. Trust me, this story gets wild. Kevin and I grew up in a modest middle-class home in suburban Michigan. Our parents worked hard to provide for us, but luxuries were few. As the older brother, I shared my bedroom with Kevin until I was 16, when Dad converted part of our basement into a small room for me. Those early years created a special bond between us. I taught Kevin how to ride a bike, helped him with homework, and stood up for him when neighborhood bullies targeted him for his smaller size. After high school, I juggled 3 jobs simultaneously: morning shifts at a local bakery, afternoon work at a hardware store, and weekend gigs doing lawn maintenance. Every penny went toward saving for community college. Unlike many of my friends who partied through their late teens, I was laser-focused on building something for myself. Our parents could not afford to help with education costs, especially with Kevin approaching college age himself. At 24, my life changed when a regular customer at the hardware store, an elderly real estate investor named Marcus, took me under his wing. He showed me how to identify undervalued properties, secure financing, and manage renovations. My first property was a dilapidated duplex that I fixed up over 6 months of evenings and weekends. The profit from that sale funded my next 2 investments, and within 3 years, I had a small but growing portfolio. Throughout this time, my grandfather Thomas was my biggest supporter. While my mother often criticized my choice to work rather than pursue a traditional 4-year degree, Grandpa Thomas understood my vision. He had built his own construction business from scratch decades earlier and recognized the entrepreneurial spirit in me. Land is the one thing they are not making more of, Lynn, he would tell me during our fishing trips at his lakeside home. People will always need somewhere to live, and if you provide value, you will always have value. The lakeside house was Grandpa's pride and joy. Situated on 3 acres with 200 feet of private shoreline on Lake Mitchell, the 3-bedroom cabin-style home was not luxurious by modern standards, but its location and the craftsmanship he had put into it made it special. Every summer weekend of my childhood included fishing off his dock, learning to swim in the clear waters, and evening bonfires where he would tell stories of his youth. When Grandpa Thomas passed away 3 years ago at 91, I was devastated. We had remained close through my adulthood, and I visited him at least twice a month. His will revealed that he had left the lakeside property specifically to me, with a letter explaining that he had seen how I appreciated the value of property and would honor the home he had built with his own hands. My parents received his savings and investments, while Kevin was given Grandpa's collection of vintage watches and fishing equipment. The inheritance never caused any obvious friction initially. Kevin seemed happy with the sentimental items, and my parents were pleased with the financial cushion they received. I made it clear that the lakeside house would always be open to family visits, maintaining our tradition of summer gatherings and holiday celebrations there. My long-term plan was to eventually make the lake house my permanent residence. At 34, I had built a successful real estate business, managing 15 rental properties and flipping approximately 3 houses per year. I was not married and had no children, though I had been in a relationship with Melissa for 2 years before we amicably parted ways due to different life goals. The lakeside property represented my future, a place where I could eventually slow down and enjoy the fruits of my hard work. Kevin, at 30, had taken a different path. After college, he secured a marketing position at a mid-sized company where he had remained for 8 years. His career was stable but not particularly lucrative. He had always been more social than me, maintaining a wide circle of friends and an active dating life. Our relationship remained good, though less close than in childhood as our lives diverged. 2 years ago, Kevin met Ashley at a corporate event. She worked in the sales department of a partner company, and according to Kevin, there was an immediate connection. Within 3 months, they were officially dating, and Kevin brought her to our monthly family dinner. My first impression of Ashley was generally positive. She was attractive, articulate, and seemed genuinely interested in our family. She asked thoughtful questions about everyone's lives and complimented my mother's cooking effusively. If anything struck me as slightly off, it was her designer handbag and clothing that seemed beyond what her position would afford, but I dismissed this as simply having different priorities with money. Over the next several months, Ashley became a regular fixture at family gatherings. She and my mother bonded quickly, shopping together and exchanging frequent calls and texts. Mom had always been somewhat partial to Kevin, finding more in common with his outgoing nature than with my more reserved personality. With Ashley, she found a daughter figure she had always wanted. Our family dynamics were such that Mom tended to accommodate Kevin's needs and wants more readily than mine, something I had long ago accepted. Dad was more even-handed in his treatment of us, but generally deferred to Mom's stronger personality in family matters. This balance had worked for decades without major conflict, but looking back, it created the perfect conditions for what would eventually unfold. As Ashley became more integrated into our family, subtle changes began to emerge in Kevin's attitude toward me. Comments about my single status became more frequent, with implications that I was somehow incomplete without a partner. There were small jabs about my obsession with work and property, suggesting I valued money over relationships. These remarks were always delivered with a laugh, making it difficult to object without seeming oversensitive. What I did not recognize at the time was how Ashley was carefully observing our family dynamics, identifying the existing fault lines, and beginning to exploit them for her own purposes. The storm that would eventually erupt at the wedding was brewing long before I felt the first raindrops. Kevin announced his engagement to Ashley during a family dinner 8 months ago. Mom cried tears of joy. Dad opened a bottle of champagne he had been saving for a special occasion, and I genuinely congratulated my brother. The evening was filled with excited discussion about wedding plans, with Ashley already having clear ideas about venues, color schemes, and floral arrangements. As the night progressed and the champagne flowed, Ashley casually mentioned how much she loved the lakehouse. It would be the perfect place for a summer home, she said, glancing at me. Do you spend much time there, Lynn? I explained that I visited regularly and maintained the property carefully, planning to eventually make it my primary residence. Ashley nodded, but then added, "It seems such a waste for just one person. All those bedrooms empty most of the time." The comment landed awkwardly, but everyone quickly moved on to other wedding topics. At the time, I thought nothing of it, attributing her remark to the excitement and champagne. However, over the following weeks, Ashley's interest in the lakehouse became increasingly apparent. During a Sunday lunch, she asked detailed questions about the property taxes, maintenance costs, and whether I had considered renting it out when not in use. Again, I politely explained my attachment to the place and my future plans. Kevin's behavior toward me also began to shift more noticeably. Where once he would enthusiastically ask about my latest property project, he now made dismissive comments about hoarding real estate while others struggled to find affordable housing. This criticism felt particularly unfair given that my business focused on renovating neglected properties and providing quality rental housing at fair market rates. At a Memorial Day cookout at my parents' house, Ashley steered conversations toward childhood memories at the lakehouse, prompting Kevin to reminisce about how much the place meant to him too. Mom joined in, commenting that family properties should benefit the whole family, with a pointed look in my direction. The implication was clear, though still indirect. The first truly uncomfortable moment came when Ashley and Kevin visited my home one afternoon, ostensibly to drop off an invitation to their engagement party. While Kevin and I chatted in the living room, Ashley excused herself to use the bathroom. 20 minutes later, Kevin wondered aloud where she had gone, and I found her in my home office, looking through a folder of property documents I had left on my desk. "Sorry," she said with a smile that did not reach her eyes. I got turned around looking for the bathroom and noticed these papers about the lake house. I was just curious about the layout. It would be perfect for children someday. All that outdoor space to play. The bathroom was directly across from the kitchen, nowhere near my office. I calmly escorted her back to the living room, uncomfortable with her flimsy excuse, but not wanting to create tension by calling her out directly. 2 weeks later, Kevin called me for lunch, just the two of us. After some general catching up, he steered the conversation toward his future with Ashley. "We have been talking about starting a family soon after the wedding," he said, stirring his coffee absently. "We have been looking at houses, but the market is insane right now. Nothing in our price range has the kind of space we want for kids." I expressed sympathy about the housing market, even offering to give him advice on neighborhoods with good value. "Actually," Kevin continued, "we were thinking about the lake house." When I did not immediately respond, he pressed on. You have all those rental properties, Lynn. You could live in any of them. The lake house has been in the family for generations. It seems selfish to keep it all to yourself when Ashley and I could raise the next generation of our family there. The directness of his request stunned me. This was no longer subtle hinting but an outright suggestion that I should give up my inheritance to him and his future bride. Kevin, I said carefully, Grandpa left the house to me because he knew how much it meant to me. I am sorry, but that house is my future home. I would be happy to help you find and even renovate a place that would work for your family, but the lake house is not an option. Kevin's face hardened in a way I had rarely seen. You always were Grandpa's favorite. Just because you followed him into property does not mean you deserved everything. Some of us chose careers that help people, rather than just accumulating assets. His words stung, especially the mischaracterization of both my relationship with our grandfather and my work. I rebuilt homes that would otherwise be condemned, created safe living spaces for families, and provided jobs for local contractors. But I swallowed my defense, not wanting to escalate the situation. I am sorry you feel that way, was all I said. We finished our lunch in uncomfortable silence. That evening, Mom called, clearly having heard Kevin's version of our conversation. Lynn, I am very disappointed in you, she began without preamble. Your brother is starting a family. He needs that house more than you do. You need to be generous with family. When I tried to explain my position, she interrupted. Family means sacrifice. Your grandfather would want you to share his legacy, not hoard it for yourself. The call ended with her telling me to think long and hard about what kind of brother and son you want to be. Dad called the next day, his tone more measured. Your mother is upset, he said. You know how she gets about these things. Kevin has always been. Well, you know how she is with him. And you think I should give up the lake house? I asked. Dad sighed. I did not say that. Just, maybe there is a compromise? Could they use it part-time? Or maybe you could help them with a down payment on a place of their own. His suggestions were reasonable, but the underlying assumption that I should be the one to accommodate Kevin and Ashley's demands bothered me. I will think about ways I might help them find their own place, I conceded. Dad seemed relieved that I was at least open to some form of assistance. As weeks passed and wedding planning intensified, the tension around the lake house issue grew rather than dissipated. Family gatherings became exercises in navigating emotional minefields. Ashley would make comments about family legacy and sharing blessings, while Mom would reminisce about Kevin playing at the lake as a child, as though building a case for his rightful claim to the property. I began to feel isolated within my own family, cast as the villain simply for keeping what was legally and intentionally left to me. The situation was taking a toll on my mental well-being, and I found myself making excuses to miss some family events to avoid the constant pressure. As the wedding date approached, Ashley took complete control of every detail of the planning process. The modest celebration Kevin had initially described evolved into an elaborate affair with 200 guests, a premium venue, and costly extras at every turn. Kevin mentioned in passing that they had increased their budget substantially, which raised concerns given what I knew of their finances. My brother earned a respectable but not exceptional salary, and Ashley's sales position, while potentially lucrative in commissions, did not seem sufficient to fund the lavish wedding they were planning. When I gently inquired about how they were managing the costs, Kevin brushed off my concerns with vague references to saving up and Ashley's family helping out. My suspicions that something was amiss grew stronger when my cousin Taylor, who worked at a local wedding planning service, called me in confusion. Lynn, I just wanted to check something with you, she said hesitantly. Ashley came in to discuss floral arrangements and showed our designer photos of the lake house, talking about hosting post-wedding events there. She specifically mentioned the new owners would be making renovations after the honeymoon. Did you sell the property? The news was deeply disturbing. Not only was Ashley continuing to fixate on the lake house, but she was now actively misrepresenting herself as the future owner to wedding vendors. When I confronted Kevin about this incident, our conversation quickly deteriorated into the worst argument we had ever had as adults. Ashley was just being optimistic, he defended initially, before his tone changed to accusation. If you were not being so stubborn, it would be true anyway. You have plenty of properties. This is just one house you visit occasionally. It is not just a house, Kevin. It is Grandpa's legacy that he specifically wanted me to have. And regardless, you and Ashley have no right to tell people you are taking ownership of something that belongs to me. Kevin's face flushed with anger. Everything has always come so easily to you, hasn't it? Grandpa's favorite, the successful businessman, the one with all the assets. Some of us have to struggle for what we get. His characterization was so contrary to the reality of my life. The years of working multiple jobs, the risks I had taken, the countless hours of labor I had put into renovating properties myself to save costs, that for a moment I could not even respond. Ashley and I deserve that house, Kevin continued, his voice rising. We are going to have a family. What are you going to do with it? Sit there alone counting your money? I left before saying something I might regret, but the interaction left me deeply shaken. The brother I had protected and supported throughout childhood now viewed me through a lens so distorted, I barely recognized the person he was describing. Within days, I learned that Ashley had been systematically turning family members against me. My aunt called to express her disappointment in my refusal to help Kevin start his married life. A cousin mentioned that Ashley had told him I was planning to sell the lake house to developers who would destroy its natural beauty. These calculated misrepresentations were spreading through our extended family, damaging relationships I had valued all my life. Mom, rather than questioning these stories or seeking my perspective, became Ashley's most vocal advocate. Ashley is going to be family now, she told me during an increasingly tense phone call. You need to welcome her properly, and that means being generous. I have offered to help them find and even partially fund their own place, I reminded her. That seems pretty generous to me. You know that is not what they want, Mom replied dismissively. The lake house has space for children to grow up, just like you and Kevin did. Stop being difficult about this. Dad attempted to mediate the situation, but found himself caught between Mom's insistence and my firm stance. Your mother is very upset about this whole thing, he told me privately. Maybe there is some arrangement that could work for everyone? A timeshare situation, perhaps? Dad, this is not a negotiation, I explained, trying to keep frustration from my voice. The house was left to me for a reason. I am happy to help Kevin and Ashley establish their own home, but I am not giving up my inheritance because they decided they want it. I understand, Dad said wearily, but this wedding has everyone's emotions running high. Maybe revisit the discussion after things settle down? A week before the wedding, I received a disturbing piece of information from my business partner, Julian. During a routine credit check for a potential commercial tenant, he had discovered that Kevin and Ashley had accumulated significant debt, multiple maxed-out credit cards, a personal loan with a high interest rate, and late payments on Ashley's car loan painted a picture of financial irresponsibility that alarmed me. I would not normally share this kind of information, Julian said apologetically, but given what you have told me about the situation with the lake house, I thought you should know. If they are pushing so hard for valuable property, there might be financial motives beyond emotional attachment. The revelation put the entire situation in a new light. Perhaps Ashley's interest in the lake house was not about family legacy, or even a place to raise children, but about acquiring a valuable asset they could potentially sell or borrow against to address their mounting debts. My concerns were confirmed the very next day, when Kevin and Ashley requested a private dinner with me at their apartment. After an awkward meal of takeout pasta, Ashley cleared her throat and placed an envelope on the table between us. Kevin and I have given this a lot of thought, she began, her voice professionally smooth. We would like to formally request the lake house as our wedding gift from you. Inside the envelope was a typed letter outlining their case for why I should transfer the property to them, including mentions of family legacy, their plans for children, and even a suggestion that our grandfather would have wanted the house to go to the first grandchild to start a family. The document concluded with a request for me to sign ownership transfer papers they would provide at the wedding reception. The audacity of the formal request left me momentarily speechless. When I found my voice, I was surprised by my own calmness. I understand this property means something to both of you, I said carefully, but my answer remains no. The lake house was specifically left to me, and I intend to honor our grandfather's wishes by keeping it. However, I am still willing to help you find and establish your own family home. Ashley's pleasant demeanor instantly vanished. This is not a negotiation, she said, echoing the exact words I had used with my father. We are telling you what we need as a wedding gift. Nothing else is acceptable. Kevin at least had the decency to look uncomfortable, but he stood by Ashley's position. Lynn, be reasonable. You have multiple properties. This is the only thing we are asking for. A property worth over $500,000 is not a small ask, I pointed out. And again, it has significant personal value to me beyond the financial aspect. Ashley's eyes narrowed. So your answer is no? You would deny your own brother this one thing for his wedding? I am not denying him support or a gift. I am declining to give away my inheritance, which was never his or yours to claim. As I stood to leave, Ashley delivered what she clearly intended as a parting threat. You should reconsider before the wedding. Family relationships can change very quickly, and you might not like the outcome if you continue to be this selfish. The night before the wedding, I received a text message from Ashley that sent a chill down my spine. Final chance. Bring the property transfer papers to the wedding, or you will regret showing up at all. I forwarded the message to my lawyer, David, who had been advising me through this increasingly concerning situation. Document everything, he responded. Do not engage further before the event, but be prepared for confrontation based on this tone. Despite the warning signs, I still did not anticipate just how public and humiliating that confrontation would be. The wedding was held at Lakeside Gardens, an upscale venue with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a small lake. The irony of the location was not lost on me, particularly when I noticed the rustic chic decor that seemed inspired by the very lake house they had been so aggressively pursuing. From the moment I arrived, the atmosphere felt strained. Relatives who normally would have greeted me warmly gave perfunctory nods or avoided eye contact altogether. I was seated at a table far from the family section, alongside distant acquaintances and Kevin's work colleagues, rather than with my parents or close relatives. The message was clear. I was being ostracized. The ceremony itself was beautiful, I had to admit. Ashley looked stunning in an elaborate gown that must have cost thousands, and Kevin appeared genuinely happy as they exchanged vows. For a brief moment, watching my younger brother commit to marriage, I felt a pang of regret that our relationship had deteriorated so severely over material possessions. As guests moved from the ceremony space to the reception area, I made a point of staying positive, making small talk with the few people who seemed unaware of the family drama. Mom and Dad stopped briefly at my table, Dad giving me a sympathetic pat on the shoulder, while Mom merely nodded, before quickly moving on to greet other guests. The traditional wedding events proceeded without incident through the initial toasts and the first course of dinner. The best man, Kevin's college roommate, gave a heartfelt speech about friendship and growth. Then the maid of honor spoke warmly about Ashley's determination and vision for the future. When Ashley herself stood to make a speech, I tensed slightly, but told myself she would not create a scene at her own wedding. She began by thanking everyone for attending and expressing gratitude for the support and love from both families. Marriage is about building a life together, she said, glass raised. Kevin and I are so blessed to have family members who understand the importance of setting up the next generation for success. She proceeded to thank specific people for their wedding gifts, an unusual but not unheard of addition to a wedding speech. To Kevin's parents for the generous check that will help furnish our new home. To my parents for the beautiful car. To my grandparents for the family heirloom jewelry that I will one day pass down to our children. Then her gaze locked onto me, her smile tightening. Unfortunately, not everyone understands the concept of family generosity. Some people prefer to keep family legacies to themselves, rather than sharing with those who would truly appreciate them. An uncomfortable murmur ran through the crowd as guests realized they were witnessing something unexpected and inappropriate. Kevin shifted in his seat, looking both embarrassed and angry, though whether at Ashley or me was unclear. Lynn, she continued, pointing her champagne glass in my direction, has decided that a house that has been in this family for generations should remain empty most of the year, rather than becoming a true home for the next branch of the family tree. I remained expressionless, determined not to react to this public ambush. My lawyer's advice echoed in my head. Do not engage, remain calm, give them nothing to use against you later. But Ashley was not finished. Setting down her glass, she walked purposefully across the reception hall toward my table. The room fell silent, as guests realized something dramatic was unfolding. Kevin half rose from his seat at the head table, then sat back down, apparently unwilling to intervene. Standing directly in front of me, Ashley spoke in a voice designed to carry to every corner of the room. We have given you multiple opportunities to do the right thing. Today is the last chance. Where are the property transfer papers? Ashley, I said quietly, this is not the time or place for this discussion. We can talk after your honeymoon if you still want to. No more delays, she snapped. Everyone here knows what you are doing, keeping a family home from a newly married couple who actually need it. Do you have the papers or not? No, I do not, I replied, keeping my voice level. And I have made my position clear multiple times. The lake house is not available. I am happy to help you and Kevin find your own home, but that property is not on the table. Ashley's face contorted with rage. "You selfish, greedy bastard," she hissed, before drawing back her hand and slapping me hard across the face. The sound echoed through the silent reception hall. 200 pairs of eyes witnessed my humiliation as the red mark spread across my cheek. For several seconds, nobody moved or spoke, the collective shock palpable. I slowly stood, maintaining what dignity I could. Ashley remained in front of me, seemingly waiting for a reaction that would justify her behavior. Kevin had finally risen and was making his way toward us, his expression unreadable. Before either of them could speak again, Mom appeared at my side. But rather than defending me or admonishing Ashley for her outburst, she gripped my arm tightly and whispered fiercely, "Do not make a scene. Just leave quietly, for goodness sake." The betrayal in that moment cut deeper than Ashley's slap. My own mother, witnessing her son being publicly assaulted, was concerned only with appearances and containing potential embarrassment. "Congratulations on your wedding," I said to Kevin as he approached, my voice steady despite the emotions churning inside me. "I hope you will be very happy together." Without waiting for a response, I walked calmly through the stunned crowd and out of the venue. Not a single family member called after me or followed to check if I was all right. The message could not have been clearer. In the hierarchy of family concerns, my dignity and well-being ranked far below, maintaining the facade of a perfect wedding. The drive home was a blur, my mind replaying the humiliating scene while trying to process the complete abandonment by my family. I had done nothing wrong except decline to give away a valuable property that was rightfully mine. Yet somehow I had been cast as the villain worthy of public shaming. As I pulled into my driveway, my phone began buzzing with messages and missed calls. I turned it off without checking any of them, needing time to collect myself before facing the inevitable fallout. Inside my house, I poured a glass of whiskey and sat in the dark, trying to make sense of how family relationships I had valued my entire life could disintegrate so completely over property. By morning, I had 26 text messages, 15 missed calls, and 11 voicemails. Most were from extended family and mutual friends, expressing shock at Ashley's behavior, but there were also several hostile messages from Kevin and my mother. Kevin's text was particularly cutting. "You got exactly what you deserved. Your selfishness ruined our wedding. Ashley was humiliated by your refusal after she gave you so many chances. I do not know if I can ever forgive you for this." The complete inversion of reality would have been almost comical if it were not so painful. Somehow, in their narrative, I had ruined the wedding by quietly declining to give them an expensive property, while Ashley's public tirade and physical assault were justified responses to my selfishness. Mom's message followed a similar theme. "I am so disappointed in you, Lynn. You could have just brought the papers and made everyone happy. Instead, you provoked a scene that embarrassed the entire family. Ashley was understandably upset after all the stress of wedding planning. You should apologize to both of them immediately." Not a word of concern for me. No acknowledgement that I had been assaulted. No recognition that the scene had been entirely created by the bride's inappropriate behavior. The cognitive dissonance was staggering. Dad's message was more measured, but still missed the mark. That was unfortunate all around. "Let's talk when things cool down. Maybe we can still find a solution that works for everyone." His insistence on finding a solution to the lakehouse situation, even after the wedding disaster, suggested he still believed there was a legitimate claim to be negotiated. I spent that Sunday in a fog of disbelief and hurt, alternating between anger at the injustice of it all and deep sadness at the apparent loss of my family relationships. Out of self-preservation, I deleted my social media apps temporarily, unable to bear seeing wedding photos being shared with no acknowledgement of what had transpired. Monday morning brought an unexpected development. My security system at the lakehouse sent an alert to my phone showing motion detected on the property. I opened the app to access the camera feeds and was stunned to see Kevin's car in the driveway and Ashley walking around the exterior of the house, peering in windows. I immediately called the local police, explaining the situation and requesting they check on a potential break-in at my property. Then I called my lawyer, David. "I thought they were supposed to leave for their honeymoon yesterday," David said when I described what I was seeing. "Apparently they had other priorities," I replied, watching through the security feed as Ashley tried the door handle. Thankfully, I had recently upgraded the security after becoming concerned about their fixation on the property. "Document everything," David advised. "If they damage anything or attempt to enter without permission, that strengthens our position should we need legal intervention." 40 minutes later, I received a call from Officer Ramirez of the local police department. "We responded to your call about potential trespassers at the lakehouse property," he explained. "We found a man and woman on site who identified themselves as Kevin and Ashley Turner. They claim to be family members with permission to be there." "They do not have permission," I clarified. "The property belongs solely to me, and they are aware they are not welcome there without explicit invitation." "We explained that to them and escorted them off the property," Officer Ramirez continued. "However, I should inform you that there appears to be some damage to a ground floor window at the back of the house, and the lock on the boathouse has been tampered with. Would you like to file a formal report?" The revelation that they had attempted to break in was shocking, even given their recent behavior. "Yes, I would like to file a report," I confirmed. "I will drive up there immediately to assess the damage and provide any additional information you need." The 90-minute drive to the lake house gave me time to process this escalation. Kevin and Ashley had not only verbally and physically assaulted me, but were now attempting to break into my property. Whatever their initial motivations regarding the house, their behavior had crossed from entitled to potentially criminal. When I arrived, Officer Ramirez showed me the damage, a partially broken window pane that appeared to have been struck with something heavy, and scratch marks around the boathouse lock, consistent with attempted picking or forcing. Inside the boathouse, I discovered that a small safe containing documents related to the property had been tampered with, though they had not succeeded in opening it. As I completed the police report, my phone rang again. It was Julian, my business partner, and his news was even more disturbing. "Lynn, I just got a call from Caroline at the county records office," he said, his voice tense. "She knows we do a lot of property work and wanted to give us a heads up. Someone tried to file a property transfer document for the lake house this morning." Caroline recognized the address and thought it seemed suspicious since we had not mentioned any plans to sell it. "What kind of document?" I asked, my stomach sinking. "A quitclaim deed, supposedly transferring ownership from you to Kevin and Ashley Turner." Caroline said the signatures looked off to her, which is why she called. "She has temporarily flagged the property in the system to prevent any transfers without additional verification." The implications were staggering. Not only had Kevin and Ashley tried to break into the property, but they had apparently attempted to forge documents to transfer ownership fraudulently. This went well beyond family drama, into clear legal territory. I immediately forwarded this information to David, who advised me to obtain copies of the attempted filing and add it to the police report. "This changes the situation significantly," he noted. "We may need to consider a restraining order and possibly civil action for the attempted fraud." By late afternoon, the full picture was becoming clearer and more disturbing. Security footage from the lake house showed Kevin and Ashley arriving early that morning. Ashley appeared to be directing Kevin as he attempted to force entry through various points. The timestamps indicated they had spent nearly an hour trying to gain access before neighbors noticed the suspicious activity and likely called police. More shocking was what I discovered when I reviewed older footage. This was not their first visit. The cameras had captured 3 previous instances over the past month where Ashley had come to the property alone, walking the perimeter and taking photos. On one occasion, she had brought another person who appeared to be taking measurements of the exterior. I provided all this evidence to the police, who agreed the situation had escalated beyond a simple trespassing concern. "We will be following up with Mr. and Mrs. Turner regarding the attempted break-in and the potentially fraudulent documents," Officer Ramirez assured me. "In the meantime, I would recommend strengthening your security further and considering legal measures to protect your property interests." That evening, as I secured the damaged window and installed additional security features, my phone lit up with a call from Kevin. Against my better judgment, I answered. "How dare you call the police on us?" he began without preamble, his voice slurring slightly. "We are family. You had no right." "Kevin, you tried to break into my house and apparently attempted to file fraudulent property transfer documents. Those are crimes, not family disagreements. We were just looking around what should have been our wedding gift," he insisted. "And those papers, Ashley said you had verbally agreed to the transfer and just needed to sign. She was trying to help move the process along." His willful blindness to reality was astonishing. "Kevin, I have repeatedly and clearly told both of you that the lake house is not available. There was never any verbal agreement. What Ashley attempted was fraud, plain and simple. You have ruined everything," he said, his voice breaking. "The wedding, our honeymoon, everything. Ashley is devastated." "I am sorry you feel that way," I replied, echoing the words I had used at our lunch weeks earlier. "But the choices you and Ashley have made are your responsibility, not mine. After hanging up, I sat on the porch of the lakehouse, looking out at the water that had brought so much peace throughout my life. Now the property that had been my sanctuary was at the center of a family implosion that threatened relationships I had valued for decades. Yet despite the pain, I felt a growing certainty that I had done nothing wrong by protecting what was rightfully mine. A full week passed, with no contact from my immediate family. I had returned to my primary residence, but increased security at both properties and instructed my lawyer to prepare for potential legal action if the situation escalated further. The attempted fraud with the quitclaim deed was particularly concerning, as it showed a level of premeditation and dishonesty that went beyond heated emotions. David advised me to compile a complete record of all interactions regarding the lakehouse, from the initial inheritance through the wedding incident and subsequent break-in attempt. Documentation is your best protection, he emphasized. Their actions have moved from inappropriate to potentially criminal. We need to be prepared for whatever comes next. With his guidance, I retrieved copies of my grandfather's will, the property deed, tax records showing my consistent payment of all property expenses, and maintenance records demonstrating my active caretaking of the house. I also compiled a timeline of events, including dates and details of conversations where Kevin and Ashley had made demands regarding the property. As part of this documentation process, David suggested we look more deeply into Ashley's background. Given the pattern of behavior, it would be prudent to understand if there is any history we should be aware of, he explained. What we discovered was troubling. Through legal channels, we learned that Ashley had been involved in 2 previous lawsuits. In one case, an ex-boyfriend had obtained a temporary restraining order against her following their breakup, citing harassment and threats. In another, a former employer had accused her of taking client information when she left the company. Both cases had been settled out of court, but the pattern suggested someone comfortable with manipulative and potentially illegal behavior. More directly relevant to our situation, we found evidence that Ashley had accumulated significant personal debt before meeting Kevin. Credit reports revealed multiple maxed-out credit cards, a personal bankruptcy filing 3 years earlier, and a pattern of opening new credit accounts shortly before maxing them out and moving on to others. This provides context for her aggressive pursuit of the lakehouse, David observed. A property of that value would solve a lot of financial problems, either through sale or as collateral for loans. The revelation crystallized what had been nagging concerns about Ashley's motives. This was not about family legacy or emotional attachment to the property, but a calculated attempt to acquire a valuable asset she could leverage to address financial issues. After careful consideration, I decided to share this information with my father. Though he had disappointed me with his passivity during the conflict, he had at least attempted to maintain communication and showed some recognition that the situation was complex. Mom, in contrast, had sent only accusatory messages blaming me entirely for the wedding fiasco. Dad agreed to meet me for lunch at a neutral location, a quiet restaurant halfway between our homes. He looked tired when he arrived, the strain of the family conflict evident in the new lines around his eyes. "How are you holding up?" he asked as we settled at our table, a question that acknowledged, at least minimally, that I might be affected by recent events. "I have been better," I admitted. "Being publicly humiliated and then blamed for it takes a toll." Dad sighed. That situation at the wedding got out of hand. Ashley should not have done what she did, regardless of how upset she was about the house situation. It was a small acknowledgement, but more than I had received from anyone else in the family. "Dad, there are things you need to know about what has happened since the wedding and about Ashley's background." I carefully laid out the evidence we had gathered: the attempted break-in at the lakehouse, the fraudulent property transfer documents, and the concerning pattern of financial and legal issues in Ashley's history. As I spoke, Dad's expression shifted from skepticism to shock, and finally to something approaching horror. "They tried to forge your signature on property documents?" he asked, clearly struggling to reconcile this information with his perception of the situation. "Are you certain?" I showed him the police report and the flag document from the county records office. "The signature is clearly not mine, and I never authorized any transfer." "This goes well beyond a family disagreement, Dad. This is fraud." For several long moments, Dad stared at the documents, then looked up with a pained expression. I had suspicions something wasn't right with Ashley. The way she came into Kevin's life and so quickly became the center of everything, the way your mother was so easily won over. It all happened so fast. "Why didn't you say anything?" "I didn't want to cause problems. Kevin seemed happy, and your mother was thrilled about the wedding. I told myself I was being overprotective. He shook his head sadly. I should have trusted my instincts. It's not too late, I said. Kevin needs to understand what's happening. Ashley appears to be using him and our family to solve her financial problems. Dad nodded slowly. I'll talk to your mother first. She needs to see this evidence. Then we can figure out how to approach Kevin. He's not in a good place right now. The honeymoon was apparently a disaster. They came back early, but they're not staying together. Kevin's been at our house for the past 3 days. The news of their troubled honeymoon wasn't surprising given the circumstances, but it did suggest that perhaps reality was beginning to penetrate whatever narrative Ashley had constructed. After lunch, Dad took copies of the documentation to show Mom. He called that evening, his voice heavy. Your mother has seen the evidence. She's processing it. It's difficult for her to accept that she might have misjudged the situation so completely. And Kevin? Not yet. We want to approach this carefully. He's very fragile right now. Dad paused, then added, I want to apologize, Lynn. I should have stood up more firmly when all this was happening. I let you down. The acknowledgement meant more than I expected. Thank you, Dad. That means a lot. Over the next few days, I received messages of support from extended family members who had witnessed the wedding incident and now heard rumors about the attempted fraud. Cousin Taylor, who had first alerted me to Ashley showing lakehouse photos to wedding vendors, called to express her support. Everyone is talking about what happened, she said. Ashley crossed so many lines. Most of the family is horrified that she slapped you, and now with these other stories coming out, people are seeing the situation very differently. A week after my lunch with Dad, my phone rang with Kevin's number. I answered cautiously, unsure what to expect. Lynn? His voice was subdued, nothing like the angry accusation of our last conversation. Can we talk? In person? We arranged to meet at a coffee shop the following day. When Kevin arrived, I barely recognized my brother. He had lost weight, his eyes were shadowed by dark circles, and his usual confident posture was replaced by a defeated slump. I owe you an apology, he began after ordering coffee. A massive, insufficient apology. For the next hour, Kevin unfolded a story that confirmed our worst suspicions while revealing how completely Ashley had manipulated him. Shortly after their engagement, she had begun suggesting they would need a larger home than they could afford, planting the idea that the lake house was the perfect solution. She had framed it as correcting an injustice, suggesting that our grandfather would have wanted the house to go to the first grandchild to start a family. She made it seem so reasonable, Kevin explained, staring into his coffee. Like you were being selfish for not seeing it that way. And once Mom agreed with her, it seemed even more legitimate. More disturbingly, Kevin had discovered after the wedding that Ashley had hidden massive credit card debt from him. She has 10 credit cards I didn't know about, all maxed out. We're talking over $70,000 in debt, at interest rates above 20%. When they returned early from their honeymoon, Kevin had found paperwork in Ashley's luggage, revealing her plan to immediately take out a home equity loan against the lake house once the property was transferred. There was even a real estate agent's assessment suggesting the property could sell for well above market value to developers interested in subdividing the lot. She never cared about family legacy or raising children there, Kevin said, his voice breaking. She saw it as a financial solution, and I was so blinded I couldn't see what was happening. The final revelation came when Kevin discovered text messages between Ashley and her friend, discussing how they would celebrate when the lake house cash came through, with explicit references to paying off debts and taking a luxury vacation. When I confronted her, she didn't even deny it, Kevin said. She just said I was naive to think sentiment should matter more than financial security. Like I was the foolish one for believing her stories about wanting to honor family traditions. As painful as Kevin's realization was, it represented a crucial turning point. The fog of manipulation was lifting, allowing him to see the situation clearly for the first time in months. I've contacted a lawyer about annulment options, he concluded. And I wanted you to know I've told the police everything about her attempts to forge documents and break into the lake house. They're taking it very seriously. Before we parted, Kevin looked at me directly for the first time in our conversation. I don't expect you to forgive me anytime soon. What I did, how I treated you, it was inexcusable. But I hope someday we might find a way back to being brothers again. His words offered the first glimmer of hope that perhaps our family relationships weren't irreparably damaged after all. 3 months passed, bringing significant changes to our family dynamics. Kevin proceeded with the annulment, citing fraud as grounds given Ashley's substantial concealment of financial issues. The process was surprisingly straightforward once evidence of her deception was presented. Ashley did not go quietly. She attempted to claim a portion of Kevin's savings, and even tried to revive the argument that she had some claim to the lakehouse based on verbal promises. Her efforts gained no traction legally, especially after the evidence of attempted property fraud came to light. The district attorney ultimately decided to pursue charges against her for the fraudulent documents, leading to a plea deal that included probation and restitution. My mother's journey to acceptance was more gradual. Her initial reaction to the evidence Dad presented was denial, followed by attempts to find alternative explanations that would preserve her positive image of Ashley. It was only when confronted with Ashley's own text messages about exploiting the lakehouse for financial gain that Mom finally acknowledged the manipulation. "I should have seen it," she admitted during a difficult conversation at my home. The way she always steered conversations to money and property, how she latched onto the lakehouse so quickly after meeting the family. I was just so happy that Kevin had found someone who seemed to care about family traditions. More meaningful than her recognition of Ashley's deception was Mom's acknowledgement of her own role in enabling the situation. "I didn't support you when I should have," she said quietly. At the wedding, when that happened, I was more worried about appearances than about the fact that my son was being treated terribly. "I'm so sorry, Lynn." Dad, for his part, became more assertive in family matters, no longer deferring automatically to Mom's stronger personality. The crisis had revealed the weakness in his passive approach, and he seemed determined not to repeat the same mistakes. "Family harmony is important," he told me during a fishing trip at the lakehouse, the first time he had visited since the conflict began, but not at the cost of allowing injustice or manipulation. I should have spoken up sooner and more firmly. Kevin faced the challenging task of rebuilding his financial stability after discovering the extent of the debt Ashley had accumulated in their joint names during their brief marriage. Though legally he could contest some of it, the process was complex and time-consuming. After considerable thought, I offered him structured financial assistance. Rather than a simple cash gift that might enable poor financial habits, I created a matching program where I would contribute to his debt payments proportionally to what he paid himself, incentivizing responsible financial management while providing meaningful help. "This means more than I can say," Kevin said when I presented the plan. "Not just the money, but the fact that you're willing to help at all after everything that happened. You're still my brother," I reminded him. "That hasn't changed, even if we have some rebuilding to do." The healing process was neither quick nor linear. There were difficult conversations, moments of setback when old resentment surfaced, and uncomfortable family gatherings, as we relearned how to interact with each other authentically, rather than through the distorted lens Ashley had created. For my part, I worked with a therapist to process the betrayal and public humiliation I had experienced. The incident at the wedding had left deeper emotional scars than I initially acknowledged, creating trust issues that extended beyond my family to relationships in general. Recognizing and addressing these effects became an important part of my own healing journey. I also took steps to legally protect the lakehouse from any future claims. On David's advice, I established a trust for the property with clear succession provisions, ensuring it would remain as my grandfather had intended, while still being available for family enjoyment under specific guidelines. The renovation project I undertook that summer became unexpectedly therapeutic. Repairing and updating the lakehouse, a place that had nearly torn our family apart, now served as a tangible symbol of renewal and restoration. I expanded the dock, rebuilt the boathouse Ashley had attempted to break into, and modernized the kitchen while carefully preserving the rustic character my grandfather had loved. During this period, I found unexpected support from extended family members who had witnessed the wedding incident and its aftermath. Cousin Taylor became a regular visitor during the renovation, helping with painting and decorating. My Aunt Clara, initially misled by Ashley's false narratives, made a point of checking in regularly and bringing homemade meals when she knew I was working at the property. These strengthened connections reminded me that while the conflict had exposed serious fault lines in our family dynamics, it had also revealed genuine care and solidarity I might otherwise have taken for granted. By the end of that year, our family had reached a new equilibrium. It wasn't a perfect resolution with all wounds magically healed, but we had established healthier patterns of communication and respect. Mom had become more mindful of her tendency to favor Kevin, making visible efforts to treat us more equitably, Dad was more willing to express his opinions rather than defaulting to peacekeeping at any cost. And Kevin, perhaps changed most profoundly by the experience, demonstrated new maturity in taking responsibility for his choices and rebuilding trust gradually through consistent actions rather than promises. The lake house, once the focus of such conflict, became a gathering place for family healing. The Thanksgiving dinner we held there, that November was markedly different from previous years, with more genuine conversations and fewer performances of family harmony. When conflicts arose, we addressed them directly rather than papering over disagreements for the sake of appearances. Looking back on the entire painful experience, I realized that while I would never have chosen such a difficult path, the crisis had ultimately strengthened both my individual boundaries and our family bonds. I had learned that standing firm on principles need not mean closing the door to reconciliation, that forgiveness does not require forgetting, and that true family loyalty manifests not in giving away what you value, but in supporting each other through both good decisions and bad ones. The peace I found was not the simple contentment I had known before, but something more complex and hard-won, a deeper understanding of both myself and my family. True healing, I discovered, comes not from pretending the wound never existed, but from acknowledging its reality while refusing to let it define your future. If you have ever faced a family conflict over property or inheritance, I would love to hear your story in the comments. How did you handle it? Were you able to find resolution? Sometimes sharing these difficult experiences helps us all feel less alone in navigating family dynamics. If this story resonated with you, please like and subscribe for more real-life experiences and lessons learned the hard way. And remember, sometimes standing your ground is not just about protecting what belongs to you, but about maintaining the truth in relationships that matter. Thank you for listening to my story.